Hello and welcome back to my analysis of Agenda 2030, continuing the fight against the globalists at www.dsunion.org. Now, before we begin, I want to point out something that happened within the last, I think, day or two. And it's important because it shows the hypocrisy of the far left. Not everybody in the left, but just the far left. Now, Donald Trump has appointed a man named Richard Grenell to be the ambassador to the United Nations, to be the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Now, why is this important? This is important because he's the first openly gay U.S. ambassador. Okay, you don't hear the LGBT far left community praising Trump for his diversity. The man isn't even in office, and he's already being more diverse than President Obama. Now, this comes after the first woman ever to run a successful presidential campaign, Marianne Conway, was completely ignored by the left. Now Trump has appointed the first openly gay man, Richard Grenell, to be, this is from the newdailynews.com, but you can find this anywhere, to be the first ambassador from the U.S. to the United Nations. I would like it if at least we could all get on board and cheer Donald Trump a little bit and say, you know what, we may not agree with your policies, but at least you're making an effort here. Okay, so that's that. Now, we're going to start with the introduction to the Agenda 2030. I talked about this a little bit before in the last video, but we're going to go with the actual agenda. And we're only going to look at a few pages first. So this is going to be broken down, like I said, into about 20 different videos, because if I go and I analyze all 36 pages, it's going to take probably about 10 hours, and nobody's going to sit through a video of 10 hours. My goal is to my videos be about 20 to 30 minutes at the most. So we're going to go with the preamble. Transforming Our World by 2030, Agenda for Sustainable Development. I'm going to have the links below, so please feel free to go download this, print it out, or at least have a PDF with you so that you can reference what I'm reading and you can question my analysis. I suggest you subscribe and comment below whether you disagree or agree, or whether you found something that I didn't find. So, first and foremost, I want to say that this is a beautiful document. I'm going to admit, this is a very beautiful document because what it says on the face of it is what we're all thinking. But there are some glaring problems with this. Let's begin. The preamble. Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Preamble. The agenda is a plan of action for people, planet, and prosperity. It also seeks to strengthen universal peace in larger freedom. We recognize that eradicating poverty in all its forms and dimensions, including extreme poverty, is the greatest global challenge and an indispensable requirement for sustainable development. Okay. Sounds good to me. The next line. All countries and stakeholders acting in collaborative partnership will implement this plan. Let's read this again. All countries and stakeholders. Okay? All countries. Wait a minute. What about the countries that don't want to do this? What about the countries that didn't sign on to this? What about the countries that are run by dictatorships? Do their people get a say? Stakeholders. What the hell is a stakeholder? Would you mind telling me who the stakeholders are? Are they elected? How are they chosen? Are they selected? What are the criteria? Do we know their names? No, doesn't say. Okay, continuing. Acting in collaborative partnership will implement this plan. They will implement this plan because there's no other choice, because this is the United Nations, right? This reminds me of a scene in Captain America Civil War where they're discussing the Sokovia Accords. And War Machine, I forgot the guy's name. War Machine, it tells Captain America that he's being dangerously arrogant or ignorant. I can't remember. Dangerously ignorant, because it's the United Nations that we're talking about. As if the United Nations somehow superseded state sovereignty or national sovereignty. It doesn't. Problem is that we have a lot, particularly the millennials, people that were born after 1988, 1990-ish, around there, that don't know their history, don't know what the United Nations really is, how it was founded, why it was founded, what came before, the League of Nations, why it failed, why the United Nations refused to join the League of Nations, the structure of the League of Nations, none of that. By the way, I will be making videos on the League of Nations, the structure, the rise and fall, what came afterwards, the, I gotta keep hitting the mic, the copper and coal agreements that were made in Germany after World War II that led to the rise and manifestation and implementation of the European Union, which was a fundamental part within this part of the United Nations, which is meant for global governance. I will have videos on all of that, but it takes time and it's very complicated, but I'm going to definitely do that. All right, so continuing. We resolve to free the human race from tyranny of poverty. God, I can't. I love the word, the tyranny of poverty, and want to heal and secure our planet. Okay, the tyranny of poverty. Okay. We are determined to take a bold and transformative steps. We're to take bold and transformative steps which are urgently needed to shift the world onto a sustainable and resilient path. As we embark on this collaborative journey, we pledge that no one will be left behind. Fair enough. Sounds beautiful, right? Now we continue. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals and the 169 targets, which we are announcing today being, by the way, the 2015, the date comes up later on, which we are announcing today, demonstrate the scale and ambition of this new universal agenda. They seek to build on Millennium Developmental Goals and complete. They seek to build on the Millennium Development Goals and complete what they did not achieve. In other words, the last time they failed. They seek to realize the human rights of all and achieve gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls. This is the part where people are going to call me sexist. Feel free to call me sexist and misogynist and blah, 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 blah. All the keywords, comment them below if you're one of those leftist wingnuts. Now, let's analyze this from a linguistic point of view, and then we'll go from a philosophical point of view. They seek to realize the human rights of all. That's where the period should have ended. If this is transforming our world, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development by the United Nations, and they said they seek to realize the human rights of all, period, I would have clapped. Here's the problem. And achieve gender equality. Well, first of all, which gender are you talking about? Because apparently there's 182 genders now. I assume they mean traditional men and women genders. In that case, I guess LGBT people should be angry at the United Nations for not including all 187 genders? Hey, petition the United Nations, right? But here's the problem. If you say all, and then you specifically target the empowerment of women and girls, well, that's kind of a little unfair. I understand there is a problem with gender equality in third world countries. No. There is no problem with gender equality in the United States. Go fuck yourself. Go look at the statistics. That is bullshit. There is no fucking problem. Only in certain sectors, in certain areas, is that still relevant, but that has more to do with ability than it has to do with whether you have a penis or a vagina. Sorry, I'm not going to agree with you on that one. If you want to say in India, in certain parts of rural India, there is gender inequality, yeah, All right, I agree with you. But that's not for the United Nations to solve. That's for India to solve. And a bunch of white unelected people in Europe telling India, which is not the first time, telling India what to do is not really conducive to solving the problem. And I have some points to make later on about that I wrote down here. Okay, so continuing. They are integrated and indivisible and balance the three dimensions of sustainable development: economic, social, and environmental. Here's where I have a huge problem. It is well known that about 95% of the world is religious. The top religion being Judeo-Christian religion, or actually being Christianity, in all its forms and manifestations. The second being Islam. The third being Judaism. The fourth being Hinduism. And the fifth being Buddhism, if you want to count that as a religion. There are many Buddhists that don't count it as a religion. Some do. Hey, whatever your cup of tea is, right? Here's the problem that I have with that. Three dimensions of sustainable development: economic, social, I need to get a new cord. Economic, social, and environmental. There's no God. There's no religion. So, you want sustainable development without including religion and God? How? You're going to go to every country and say, no, we're going to be completely sustainable, we're going to completely development, but there's no room for God anymore. Look, like I said, whatever your cup of tea is, that's fine with me. I do have some bit of an issue with Islam, but it's not all of Islam. It's extreme Islam, which I would hope everybody would have an issue with. I have some good Islamic friends, and I trust them with a key to my house. I trust them babysitting my children. If I had children. Babysitting my cat, right? Which they have, by the way. But here's the problem, right? For the record, I'm a Hindu. Most of my family are Christian. I have friends that are Muslim. I have friends that are Jewish. Their religion is center to their way of life. How can you have sustainable development of the United Nations without taking account religion or God? This really looks like a document written by a communist, by somebody without a God, or somebody purposefully excluding God from the issue. You cannot realistically solve a problem on earth between countries without including religion. You can't do it. Continuing. And this will be, well, actually there's two more points on this page. The goals and targets will stimulate action over the next 15 years in areas critical importance for humanity and the planet. I'm going to read that one more time. The goals and targets will stimulate action over the next 15 years in areas of critical importance for humanity and the planet. Here's my problem with that. And I wrote it down here in a beautiful pink pen. Who determines what is critical? What are the parameters of such determination? Where is the data? And more importantly, or not more importantly, but just as importantly, how is that data collected? I'm a person that I love data. I love numbers. I love definitions. I love tangible things. I love to be able to break things apart, put them up together. Except for mechanical things, which once I break them, they never work again. But when I think of what is critical importance for humanity, who made that determination? Who decided this was critical? I'm going to go ahead and assume they were the unelected people that were appointed to this committee or to produce this agenda. Okay, fair enough. What are those parameters? Nowhere in this document does it say what those parameters are. Third, the data. Where's the data? How do you show me that that is something that is critical? The next, how did you collect that data? How can I verify myself independently? How can I verify that that data is true or not true? Now see, the problem that I have with this document, or one of the major problems that I'm having to start with, is that I go back and I look at the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America and the Constitution of the United States of America, and I see that in the Declaration of Independence they said all men are created equal, they are endowed by their God with unalienable rights, among that are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then they went on. in a document to detail A, B, C, D, how. They gave a very clear document on how things should be. This is general bullshit. And there really isn't that much that is very clear. If not, it's left kind of open to interpretation, which is very dangerous because what they're calling for is superseding national sovereignty. Now, when it comes to planet, this is one of the points here. Again, we determined the project of the planet to protect the planet from degradation, including through sustainable consumption and production, sustainable management, its resources, its natural resources, and taking action, urgent action on climate change. Urgent action on climate change. Here's where I have a big issue. No, I don't believe in global warming. It's not. There is no global warming. The South Pole's getting bigger. Most of the icebergs are getting bigger. The Himalayas are getting bigger. Yes, the Northern Pole is melting a little bit more than it should, or at least that we think it should, right? Except that when you look, all the planets in our solar system, the northern hemisphere, except for Venus, which is the southern hemisphere, because Venus is flipped, right? And north is south and south is north with perspective to Earth and the other planets. So what that tells us is that the solar system is either moving into an energetic field, something is coming nearby, or the sun is acting weird. Or there's an unknown factor, as idiopathic, as we say in medicine, which is a beautiful word for saying, I have no idea what's wrong. The truth is that we should be warmer than we are now. And I think they know that. We're in a warming period. We're in an interglacial warming period, and it should be warmer. But mark my words, we're entering into a mini ice age because we're entering into something called a Milankovitch cycle. This is something that the left, the United Nations, and nobody else wants to talk about. Google it. Google Milankovitch cycle. I'm going to try to post in some links below so you can go and look at Milankovitch cycles and see what I'm talking about. CO2 is one of the weakest, if not the weakest, greenhouse gas. Their data, when you analyze it and you adjust for bullshit, I'm sorry. The only people saying that there's climate change are people in the United Nations or people who are in major universities whose job and grants depend on that, whose livelihood, their entire career depends on that. Everybody else, all the respectable scientists are saying there's no climate change. There just isn't. I'm a scientist. I've studied this for more than 15 years, and I've gone into the data. I've actually gone and looked at the ice cores. I've done my own examinations, my own experiments. And not to mention, I've traveled. I've been to the Himalayas. I've flown over the Arctic. There isn't any global warming. Okay. Not to mention, there was supposed to be, I remember, in the year 2000 when Al Gore was running, the inconvenient truth, Al Gore, the guy who invented the internet. Al Gore said that, and you can read his book, and I suggest you do, just for laughs. Don't read all of it. It's going to hurt your brain. But he said that there was going to be terrible storms and causing hundreds of trillions of damages and deaths and destruction. And oh my God, we were all so fucked. 16 years later, there are less storms, less hurricanes, less everything except for earthquakes and volcanoes, but that has a lot to do with weather manipulation and things like HAARP. But there are fewer violent storms. In fact, all their models, 100%, all their models were wrong. And now they have new models explaining everything and why we were wrong then, but right now. And you notice they don't call it global warming, they call it climate change. Because the climate is always changing. If the climate were static, then I'd be worried. Okay, so continuing on the last page, we're almost done here for today. We determine to foster peaceful and inclusive societies which are free from fear and violence. Oh, Lord. Again, many people will just completely float by this one. The word inclusive. The word inclusive means self-sustained, but it also means isolated. Something that is self-sustained. In science, a self-sustained system is a system that doesn't interact with its environment. Why is this important? To determine and foster peaceful, just and inclusive societies which are free from fear and violence. There can be no sustainable development without peace, and no peace without sustainable development. What this means is, and I want to translate this, we can't live in the countryside. You can't own property. Everything must be nationalized, or must be given to the United Nations for protection. But everybody must move to major cities. So what they want to do is move the masses to big cities that they can control, and very few rural counties, which is why you see this massive push for immigration towards major cities. There can be no sustainable development without peace. Okay, I can buy that. And no peace without sustainable development. That's a justification for war. If we don't have peace, we cannot have sustainable development. But since we must have sustainable development, we must have peace. But since we can't have peace without sustainable development, we must go to war to conquer those that cannot give us peace. This war on many different levels. War against farmers, war against people who live in rural areas. Just watch and be careful. Okay, so continuing on in terms of partnership, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says needs of the poorest and most vulnerable, and with the participation of all countries and stakeholders and all people. Again, that stakeholder word. If this were true, why aren't we redistributing food across the world? Why isn't that our priority? We make right now, just the United States alone, we make enough food to feed the world 3 or 4 times. Is it true? Most of the food goes to waste. The world can feed itself so many times over, but it doesn't get to where it needs to get for political reasons. So if they really cared about sustainable development, they would work on political issues first so that food can get to where it needs to get. The interlinkage and integrated nature of the Sustainable Development Goals. Again, interlinkage and integrated nature. This means that every state must adopt and integrate this into their national policies. But again, we the people had no voice, no vote, and no say in this. What if I don't agree with this? Well, I get to shut the fuck up. I'm not going to shut the fuck up. I'm going to fight against this because this is bullshit. And the last part is the introduction past the declaration. But I'm going to go into some statistics here before I finish. And the statistics are that they want to conquer poverty, hunger. I want to read you some statistics from the United States. The United States, being the biggest economy in the world as of today. China's catching up, but it's probably not going to, for other reasons. The United States being the most advanced country in the world, the United States being the most technologically advanced, the United States having the most freedoms and the most liberties, having the most opportunities. I want to read you some statistic that should make you ashamed of being an American. 0.5 of the population, about 1.56 million people. 1.56 million people as of 2015 were homeless. Homeless. Living on the street like animals. 1.56 million people. Homeless. 21% of all children live in families with incomes below the poverty line. This is America. 21% of children, that's 15 million children living below the poverty line. That means that they don't eat 3 meals a day. And they don't eat good meals. That's what that means. 15 million children in the most advanced country in the world. 42% of all children live in low-income homes. 42% of children, close to 30 million children, living in low-income homes. 4.9% of the entire US population is without a job. Now you may say, Omar, that's not bad. 4.9, that's okay. The total amount of people, the true total amount of people living in that are homeless, not homeless, that don't have a job. That means that, by the way, the 4.9% is because they don't include people that are no longer looking for a job. People that are too old to work. People that, this is not including children. People that are disabled. And people who, like I said, stop looking for jobs are not included in this percentage. These are 4.9 are only the people that are actively looking for jobs. The true percent, and you can Google this, the true percent of people that are without a job in the United States, unemployed, is 160 million. 160 million. Not counting illegal immigrants. In 2014, what is the total U.S. population? 318.9 million officially as of 2014. 160 million people are unemployed. 318.9 million, the total population. That is roughly 1/3 of the United States that doesn't have a job. So when you say we want to blame Donald Trump, even though he's not in office, or we want to blame Obama, we should. We want to blame George Bush, we should. Bill Clinton, we should. Because for the last 28 or 30 years, unemployment has gone down so that now we're at 1/3 of the U.S. population without a job. 42% of all children below income, at low-income homes, 21% of children below income poverty, 1.56 million people homeless. By the way, that 1.56 million isn't included in the 4.9% of unemployed. That's where we're at today as a nation. Another one, and this one bothers me a lot. 2 million veterans. We have 2 million veterans in the country right now. 49,933 as of 2014 were homeless. Almost 50,000 veterans are homeless. These are people who served our country, fought our battles, defended our honor and our interests, and 50,000 of them are homeless. That's a disgrace. We talk about Agenda 2030 and we want to feed the poor and take care of the poverty across the world. How about we fucking take care of our own people first? How about we make sure every child in America doesn't go hungry? How about we make sure there's nobody homeless in America? Or how about we make sure that our veterans are taken care of? Or how about we make sure that 160 million people, 1/3 of the country, has a fucking job? Then we can talk about Syrian refugees or Mexican immigrants or whoever the fuck you are from the rest of the world. We should take care of our own first. Then, when we are wealthy and healthy, turn our attention to the rest of the world. Not take what little we have left and distribute it across the world, because we're going to end up a third world nation under rule of the United Nations. I don't know. You tell me what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Go and read these. Go and read this yourself and tell me what you think. Tell me if I'm wrong. Do you think that we should? Do you want to blame the billionaire class, right? Like Bernie Sanders, you want to blame the billionaires. There aren't enough billionaires. And if you take all their money together, it doesn't solve this problem. It doesn't even scratch this problem. This is a systemic problem. And I want to say this. I want to say this to anybody who really dislikes Donald Trump. Give him a chance, because he's not a Republican. This is why we elected him. He's not a Republican. And we know that. We elected him because he's not a Republican. He's an independent who used the Republican Party because the Democrat Party was impossible, because the Democrats have super delegates, which is how Bernie Sanders lost. Well, and she cheated other ways too, right? Give him a chance, because this is a complete failure of the left and the right. The left policies have been shit for the last 8 years. And before that, they were shit for the 8 years before that. 16 years of shit. Oh, no. Before that, there were 8 years of shit too. And before that, 4 years of shit. That's what we have. We've had shit for the last almost 30 years. This is why we have a chance to make a difference, real change. It's scary. I know it's scary. I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I know it's going to be different, and that makes me hopeful. So I'm going to continue to report on Agenda 2030. We're gonna finish the declarations in the next video, and we're going to go into each part of the agenda. And if you have any questions, once a week, probably on the weekend, I'm going to have a Q&A. So if you have any questions on Agenda 2030 or anything that you would like me to research or answer from what I've said, or any statistics you want me to prove, please put a message below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and don't forget to visit www.dsunion.org. That's dsunion.org for more information. It focuses on, I focus on news from Asia and Europe. News that the mainstream media doesn't want you to see. News that will never make it to the mainstream media. You'll never hear it on Fox News. You'll never see it on CNN. You're never going to see it on MSNBC, but you are going to read it in dsunion.org. I work very hard to try to bring this information to light. So please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And if you can, share this video. Thank you.